All the roads are windy.
Welcome to the show, Sarah. I'm really excited to talk to you because I'm just going to fangirl a little bit. I love your podcast and I love your no nonsense, straightforward, straight up approach. I'm like, fucking thank you. You know, like, so, and so many times you've said the thing that I'm like, will someone please talk about this? And then you say, and I'm like, oh, thank you. So just thanks for bringing it like that. And thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to talk today, and I will try to bring that same energy to our conversation.
I imagine that that's just how you show up, right? Like if you try to do a different way, you know,
It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
Right? Yeah. And I'm appreciative. So before we get started, would you like to set the energy here for us?
I would love to. I invite you and me and anyone listening to this across space and time. I invite our gods, our ancestors, our guides, our dreams to join us here and to hold the space for us to weave new futures with those dreams and with those lineages and with the agency we have, both personal and collective, in this community across space and time.
Beautiful prayer. Did you just come up with that on the fly?
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, thanks. So tell us who are your ancestors? What are the lineages you come from?
I come from folks in northern Scotland, Ireland, Germany, and England primarily, and folks who came to the United States in the late 1600s and were part of colonizing and chattel slavery in the United States. And I'm most recently from New Jersey, where I was born.
Awesome. And where do you live now, and who are the people of that land?
I live in Queens, New York, and this is the land of the Lenape and the Canarsie. So grateful to be here on this land.
Amazing. And you just recently moved back, so you had spent a lot of time in Asheville, North Carolina, right?
Yes, that's where my family has been since the late 1600s, was in North Carolina. So I moved back there as kind of part of a post-2016 ancestral repair kind of work. And I'm glad I was there. And I'm also really glad to be back in New York, which is where I really belong, like me as a human.
You know, that is real of like feeling like you belong in a place and some places you just don't belong in. And yeah.
I love Asheville. I love the Blue Ridge Mountains. I love North Carolina for good and for ill, but I am really glad to be what is home to like me in this body in this time, which is definitely New York City.
I'm really glad you were able to realize that and use your agency to go actualize that because yeah, cool.
Me too.
So you are, I don't know, a business witch, bringing it, you know, and something that I really love is that you are teaching people the basics of business, you know, real foundations that actually matter, you know, the structures and the strategies, but then you're also aware of holding space for and speaking to the magic that we carry. And you're really being able to deliver this to people who aren't just out here for the hustle. They're not just here for the profit for profit's sake. We're here because we have a purpose, we have a meaning, we have a calling. And this is sometimes really challenging for us purpose makers and meaning makers who love the earth and who see all the oppression and injustices and are like, fuck you, capitalism, fuck you, machine, fuck you, system, fuck you, patriarchy, you know, but we still have to live in it. And so personally for me, this is something that I grapple with on a basically constant basis. And recently I've found a little more peace with it, but it's something that's just always there, kind of like little under the skin thing of like, how do we cope with, you know, having to make money and create profits as business owners in this system, despite not really feeling of it and not really being aligned with its values. So please just take us there, whatever's coming up.
Yeah. So I think this is, I mean, this has been present for hundreds of years, but I think it's very present right now in this moment, with, especially with the pandemic, a level of clarity around the ways that, even almost more insidious than I think a lot of folks were super conscious of, that corporations and our systemic structures are creating illusions of choice and illusions of agency, under really, but really keeping us under their control, right? I mean, such a silly example, but like this whole, all these businesses being like, oh no, disabled folks, yeah, sorry, you can't work remotely, that's not going to work, and then magically every business goes remote, right? Such a great example of that. So I think there's like a really present feeling of that right now that is making this. I mean, we're essentially living, I mean, I'm hoping in the middle of a real labor movement revival, with like the Great Resignation, and so many people too, speaking more closely to our work, in the past 2 years starting their own businesses, right? That is, especially with the pandemic, a became all of a sudden a more viable possibility for folks, whether it was out of necessity, whether it was because if you're in the United States, you were able to get a stimulus check and like you were like, oh, I finally have enough cash to like invest in something, I need to start my business. Like there were a lot of possibility. So we operate in this system where I've been thinking about this so much recently. So I was so excited that you wanted to talk about it. Where as small business owners, I mean, really as anybody, but like as small business owners, our survival is dependent on our ability to extract from ourselves, right? I keep having this image of like myself as like a turkey or like a like pig that is like getting carved up, and it's like I'm like, do you want like this haunch of mine? Like, that's like the present image for me with this. So as someone who teaches small business, who works with small business owners, who is a small business owner, I think this is something that I think about, I don't know, most of the day, every day. Like that this like nuanced space of making money and believing really firmly, because I do, that everyone deserves to make good money if we're going to be in a money system like that, and to separating out like kind of commerce and like the right to thrive from capitalism, but at the same time being like, how do we make money when like we're all drinking from a poisoned well? Yeah, I'm that. Those are my initial thoughts, Natalie. I'm just like, we're all trying to survive, it turns out, and I'm excited to see what comes of this particular moment of self awareness around that, kind of collectively.
You said so many things, and I love this image of like the pig, and here's the haunch. Hey,
Sorry, vegans. I'm sorry. I just
well, we could turn you into a Brussels sprout, and here's a little, yeah. But it is like we extract from ourselves, and I guess looking at this in terms of the system we live in versus nature, this is like in nature, even without this system, if we were just living and in the village and stuff, there would still be pain and death and sickness. And, we would have to kill something to eat, whether it's a plant or an animal. And like this stuff still, like, this is like part of the crunchiness of life on Earth. We're like there's a weird place. Sometimes us spirits from who knows where we're from are like, wait, we have to do what to survive on this planet? But so there's still that stuff, but the difference between just existing within that kind of nature system of like we have to eat versus in this system of money and capitalism that we're in is in nature, what we eat, we then, poop out, and what we don't eat, we throw in a pile, and all of that gets composted and returns to nutrients into the earth. But in capitalism, it just gets consumed more for more sake, and it ends up stockpiled and hoarded, and it doesn't get composted. And this doesn't even just go for money. This goes for how we approach our waste management and the nutrients within the food that gets wasted, and how we approach our soil fertility and the way that big agriculture, industrial agriculture, has depleted the fertility of our soils. Like our whole system just misses this point. So I don't know, just looking at like your example of like, I think like we have to extract from ourselves, but just hearing that, what's coming up for me is it's so important that we renew ourselves. And, this is something that's kind of challenging. So I don't know, like in that terms of extracting from ourselves, which kind of has to happen no matter what. We have to like either labor and toil in fields to grow food, or we have to labor in the system. We have to extract from ourselves. But how do we replenish? And do you face a lot of objections or people's challenges? Like what comes up around that? And do you think this is even like actually as important as I might think it is right now?
Yeah, well, I think that, I mean, there's so many great things we can talk about here. I'm really interested in the tension or the kind of opposition between what I'm calling right now extraction and expansion, right? I think there's work that's extractive, and I think that there's work that's expansive. And both of them require labor, both of them require time, both of them require effort, both of them probably require us doing stuff we don't want to do. One of my big pet peeves right now is this like everyone being like, oh, I don't want to ever do anything I don't want to do. And I'm like, well, humans have always done stuff they don't want to do. So like, I don't like that as like as a theory of like a model of the world. I like can't buy into that. Like there's always things we don't want to do, but there are things that we don't want to do that I think lead towards generative and expansive results, and things that again come back to this kind of extractive and ultimately like self-abusive like relationship like with our work. And this need for replenishment then is actually something that I think that is built into this kind of expansive work concept. And this is like kind of as a language framework is something I'm really just thinking about like right now. So you're getting like the stage one.
Cool. It's a work in progress. Cool.
Very much a work in progress. But I think this idea of expansive work is, I think, inextricably tied to replenishment, right? In order for something to expand, for something to grow, it has to be replenished, right? So versus carving up the poor Brussels sprout stalk, it's not quite as good an image as like a roast pig with like an apple in its mouth. Like just imagine me like that. I'm sure that's somebody's fetish, but like I'm talking about it like not in a hot way. That instead, right, we can come back to like what you were talking about, right? A tree grows through replenishment, right? I mean, we have like a natural model for expansion through replenishment. So I think the primary things that come down, we can talk about it kind of in big, like thinking, but we can also talk about it really practically in kind of the big conceptual way. How do we create work? Can we believe in work? Can we operate in a cosmology about work and business that is expansive? This is an imagination issue on level one of creating a way of doing business and doing work that actually prioritizes this replenishment that you're talking about, right? And, here's like self-care, take breaks, like, whatever. Think of like the nap bishop and the nap ministry, right? Like prioritizing rest. There's like this whole kind of like attempt to imagine a different way of creation. Then there's some really practical, tangible pieces, which is so much of what I end up working with people on, which is that people don't know how much money they actually need to make. They have no idea how much work they need to do to make that money in their business. And then they have not taken into account their own needs or their desires in their business. So for example, somebody who, needs a certain amount of sleep every night is setting themselves up for a business where they're going to be up working till 2 a.m. every night. We can get like that level of granular. But yeah, like replenishment is required, because otherwise that's where we get to burn out. And then ultimately, I mean, whether it's, literal or more of a kind of a catatonic version, and death, right? Like, and not the natural cycle of death, the like stress, burnout, early death that we're seeing, chronically.
Yeah, and even like a kind of like zombie Walking Dead of walking around without meaning, but just kind of functioning and miserable. I see this so often. Yeah. Wow. Thanks. I'm really excited for you to develop this extractive versus expansive labor. And I love that you brought up it's an imagination issue. And, that's really resonates with me because at my core, so I don't even know if we need to get there. I'm like, I got some crazy money shit going on in my beliefs, but maybe we'll come back to that. But yeah, this extractive versus expansive and just looking at this in different ways. So, okay, let's maybe bring it to, I think we got deep in philosophy. I love that. For a little bit more tangible, I love that you touched on these needs of, it sounds like you're touching on a lot of awareness. And within this extractive versus expansive, it almost sounds like extractive, there's just kind of assumptions and kind of like sacrificing oneself on the altar of capitalism to make money, you know, versus expansive is awareness and really consciously building out a business that is holistic. And like, you teach Holistic Business Academy, like you literally teach this. So take us a little bit into your philosophy and even some of your approach to what makes something holistic in your business. Like how does one even do that versus not? And we've kind of touched on it, but like take us a little further.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're talking about this level of awareness is really important, because I think that's actually one of the reasons in the past 2 years we've seen so many people be able to start new businesses or change their jobs, is because there was enough free space for people's brains to imagine, right? And to develop that level of awareness. And there's been a lot of great, like, people talking about that. That was not like a concept I developed, just like this, but the sense of like, oh, when you are, and it's like, I just moved back to New York City, and I've had the full-time corporate job in New York. When you have a full-time corporate job in New York, you have no time to do your laundry, you have no time to cook, you have no time to clean, you have no time to think. And this is, largely believed to be, whether it's conscious or not, like purposeful, right? Like, this system depends on a lack of awareness. It depends on you having no free time. So that first step is to carve out the space for awareness. And that is, I think, the hardest piece for most people. That is going to be largely dependent on your own, mental and physical state, right? Like, I am someone who has chronic health issues, chronic mental health issues. It has taken me years to develop the level of awareness I have now, years, right? Has to do with your privilege too, right? And like, what work you're doing. If you're working 2 full-time jobs, it's gonna be a lot harder, right? So just keeping that in mind, that like, your unique experience in terms of developing awareness, it's not like, I'm never gonna be the person who's like, just like sit around and meditate for 2 hours and transcend. Like whatever. That's not practical for most people. And also, I can't sit still for 2 hours, so I would literally never say that. But we have to find some space for that awareness. And I think ultimately, if you're here listening to this podcast, you probably are creating a little space of awareness. At the very least, you're here, you're listening to this. So this can be a checkpoint in your awareness. So we have to open that door first, right? Before we can talk about the actual, like, how you build those foundations into your business. But to kind of get more specific and a little bit more grounded, I think that when I think of holistic business, I mean, all holistic means is essentially the sum of its parts, right? Is taking into account all of the different things within a certain ecosystem. Often it's referring to your body. That's like holistic wellness is looking at all of who you are and where you are in your community and what you have access to, what resources you have or don't have, and also like your brain, your body, your mind, your emotions, like all these things, right? A holistic business then is a business that takes all of that into account. Your body, your needs, your desires, also where you're situated in your community, the resources that you have access to or don't have access to, the support you have or don't have. And it's a business that builds based off of that deeply personal set of conditions, instead of being a business that is, for example, going to say, you have to do whatever it takes to make X amount of money, right? Or else. So the holistic business awareness, then, a great place to start is just to look at your life and be like, what do I wish I had time for? What do I need to have time for? Right? Something I know for a lot of folks we work with, they have children, and being able to pick up their kids from school is like a dream non-negotiable, right? Or to see them in the morning before they go to school, or to know that if somebody gets sick, that they can go and pick them up from school or whatever, right? That's actually creating a holistic business, taking that into account. It doesn't have to be, yes, I will get all philosophical and spiritual with you, but it's like, what are the tangible needs for your life? That's the place to start. And this gets really juicy and tricky, and I'd love to hear what you think about this, because I think where this starts to become an issue for people, okay, I've cracked open my awareness, I'm looking at my needs, and almost immediately people start to feel selfish and like they don't deserve it, and that they need to martyr themselves to have a business, even if it's not sacrificing on the altar of capitalism, it is sacrificing on the altar of, I don't know.
Oh yeah. So glad you're here. It's so fun. Okay, so yes, definitely, I think people feel that, and sacrificing oneself on the altar of outdated modes of parenthood, outdated modes of what it means to be in a feminine body, a female body. So many things. Okay. God, there's like 500 directions I want to go in. So in this, you're really advocating for this awareness and for people to be like, what are your needs? What are your freaking needs? And then they come up against this, oh, that's selfish. Like, I see that. I see that in my personal life, in my family, and in how this unwillingness to have awareness around one's needs and communicate it and advocate for oneself actually creates so much conflict. I mean, this stuff is gnarly. So, like, let's talk about what you've seen happen when people don't stand for their needs. Let's talk a little bit about that.
I think the first thing that happens is that people don't make the money they need to make. And one of the really cool things about business is that it's extremely tangible, right? We can look in the bank account and know what's going on, right? You know how many clients you have, you know how many customers you have, you know how much money's in the bank. I say that theoretically. I know a lot of people, when they find my work, don't check how much money they have in the bank. So I know some of you are like, I haven't looked at my bank account in 5 years. That's fine. I love you too. But there's the first thing that happens though is that people do not have the money they need, because one of the first, I think the first need that is neglected for a lot of people, and I know some of you are very special out there, maybe you Capricorns, you are on top of this, but like a lot of folks, they don't actually know how much money they need to make. And that's like the last need on their list. They're like, oh, I just want to feel good, and I just want to do good work, and I just want to help people. That's what I really need, is to help people. To me, that is such a like a red flag. I'm like, yes, I know, because there's like Natalie, you were saying that you have a purpose and a calling, and also you get to help no one if you can't take care of yourself. So that's like that step one is like, if you haven't looked at what it costs to maintain your life, do that. That is a need. That is not a nice to have. That is not like this would be cool if I could pay my rent. I mean, if that's your situation, you don't have to pay your rent. Awesome, you're winning, right? Or you don't have to pay your mortgage. Great. But like, chances are you have fixed expenses. And this is like the not sexy stuff. Everyone says spiritual business. That's just like so cool and like so chill and just helps people. You're not going to have one if you don't do this work. So that's usually my first like sign that somebody is out of touch with their needs, is if they don't know how much money they need to make and they don't know how much money they're making in their business.
Yeah, I mean, there's a common phrase, is it a business or is it a hobby? And you know what? I'm going to raise my hand over here. I'm like guilty of so many things. And I have I have been through the adventure of business, sacrificing my own needs and then becoming aware of them and all these things. Like, I have made all these mistakes and I'm still working through them. I mean, this is big stuff. And so, in terms of this, let's just dive a little deeper into money and then kind of circle back. Because I feel like so much of the crux of this is like money. It's business. We're in business for money. We're not in business because we're like volunteering, which I fucking do right now because I have really big fucking money stuff that I've been working through for a year. Oh my God, business. So like in this, I am personally in a situation where I'm just going to take it personal and selfish here. And I am in a situation where I don't have to pay my rent because my husband works, but I'm basically like subsidizing everything I do on his labor and within the system. And, it's not okay. It's not okay, not just because of that, but it's not okay because I'm not valuing myself and I haven't been able to. And what I've found at that are like so many core beliefs. It's come down to like, okay, I've done the calculations of how much money do I need to live and how much money would I like to bring in order to do the things we want to do in our life, in our marriage, in our business, in our visions as a business and to change the world and philanthropy, all this stuff. I've done these calculations. I've looked at my bank accounts. I just looked at 3 of my 4 bank accounts this morning. I know exactly how much cash. Yeah. So like I have 5 Capricorn, 5 planets in Capricorn, but I have the most fucked up money issues. But look, it comes down to these like really gnarly like money beliefs that are kind of why I brought up what I brought up in the beginning, was like, how could I possibly take other people's money if I can't free them from the system? And like, that's my personal core belief. And I'm working through it. Believe me, I've been in somatic therapy for over a year now, every week talking about money. I've had so many breakthroughs and I've done, been able to get to this point where I'm like, okay, I'm done volunteering and working for free. Earthspeak as a business makes a lot of money. It is a 6-figure business, but I don't get paid because it costs that much to pay everyone else and to pay for all the software and to pay for all the and because I've sacrificed myself because I didn't want to quote get my hands dirty in the system. So I don't know. Do you like see this happening? This kind of thing? Like I feel like it's like it's, I would say self-sabotage, but it actually feels like self-protection. And it's a really weird experience, of like I'm just coming, the past few months I've just come to be like, I'm done, quote, volunteering in my business. But now, how do I make the leap from the gap of I only make this much and I need to grow to make this much to actually like make a living in my business? This is big. This is where I'm at. So I'm just gonna be selfish and be like, what you got?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't think you're alone. I think that money is, there's so many different ways we can look at money, but I think one of the things that money is in our culture, it's a little bit of the sin eater, right? Like this is the place where especially like in the West, especially in the United States, right, that our economy is based off of, is like the place where everyone's, I mean, sins is the word that comes up, but where we kind of like shove in everything that is bad about ourselves and spread it across everybody else, right? This becomes like the way that
A lot of projection.
we project and we share in the shame of of what we've done and what we continue to do. So money then, money is a child of humans. We invented it and we treat it with disgust and shame, right? We ask it to like carry that shame for us and spread it around. So maybe it won't smell as much on each of us, right? So it's not surprising that we have a lot of issues with this. I think ultimately, most folks don't have at their some do, but a lot of people, the core belief is usually not I, don't deserve. Well, I was actually going to say, I think a core belief for a lot of folks is is asking, do I deserve to live if it's going to impact somebody else? And while not everyone goes there, I think that is actually, especially for folks in kind of the spiritual space, the wellness space, that's, I think, actually a really core thing. Just like you were saying, Natalie, if I am taking money, right? Because that's, I think what you said was use the word taking money
Probably.
from other people, then I have to deliver them from the system. And if you don't, do you deserve to live?
Basically my thought process. Yeah. I mean, that's basically the toxic loop I'm in.
So this to me is this, like, I was about to say toxic martyrdom. I'm not sure there's another kind at this point.
It's toxic as fuck. I mean, this has spread so much. It is not healthy or happy.
No, and you're not alone. This is something I see a lot. And I think there's a couple of things. There is this, like, do I value my own life enough to preserve it? And can I do that in the face of gross injustice? And for a lot of people, I think honestly, the answer is no. I think it is so overwhelming. It is overwhelming emotionally. It is overwhelming intuitively. If you are, a sensitive kind of person, that it becomes really easy to say, oh, well, it would be better if I just weren't cared for, essentially. Because then at least there'd be like, I mean, and I know this sounds a little dark, like there'd be like one less mouth to feed, one less problem. And it's not often that deeply conscious, but that's like the subconscious belief. Like it'd be better if I were just like hiding in the corner and just like make myself as small as possible because there's so many other problems in the world and I can't handle being around them. And if I'm like removed from it, then I will feel safer because I know I'm not taxing other people. Right. So how do we start to work with this? I think first of all, and I'm so happy that you're in therapy and I'm in therapy too, right? Um,
Everyone go to therapy.
and this is a therapy issue though, and I think that this is a deep psychological thing because ultimately that kind of disregard for our own life as an individual, that is something that is a therapeutic and you need to work with an expert on, and that is outside of my scope. But the awareness of it, just to be super clear, as a business coach, but the awareness of it is important because we start to notice the things that we do to ourselves that we would never do to somebody else. Right? Would you ever say to somebody, like you just told me, one of the reasons that you're not paying yourself enough is because you have all these other people that are getting paid, right? I last year cut my salary to a level that was not super helpful. Like I was okay, but like very, very tight. Because I didn't want to hire somebody without being able to pay them properly. And I made that choice, but it brought this right back up for me. And like, I still need to survive too. I find that at this place, I'm curious with this, how this hits for you, that often until we've done that deeper work, that therapeutic work, taking the shift off of ourselves and onto other people actually is easier, even though it's kind of like hijacking the existing pathway of martyrdom. But if we flip it a little bit on its head and say, Natalie, how does your work impact people? So when people work with you, when they join your community, when they are in your membership, when they listen to this podcast, what does it do for people?
Well, first of all, it helps them reconnect with a sense of meaning and agency in themselves beyond the system of capitalism, gives them a space to belong. The number one thing people come to us is they no longer feel alone in their spiritual practices and beliefs. This is huge. Ever since the first episode I put out, I had no following, no nothing, and people started listening and writing. I was like, what? I had just so green. And so people no longer feel alone. And on top of that, they get to witness themselves and witness others in a way that helps them grow greater trust in themselves, in their intuition. They learn how to hear their intuition, which is that greater voice of the earth and spirit speaking through them, guiding them beyond these man-made systems into what their calling is and who they truly are, so they can embody that. And that, awakens creativity. And all of these help relieve stress. And actually, I'm not going to say, I am studying somatic experiencing to help people with this. So we're moving towards being able to help people really heal their trauma too. And so that the system is inflicted. And people have made huge life changes because of the space that is held and the witnessing and being witnessed that they've gotten from being part of Earth Speak. And they get to learn and grow and share with with other people who get them. And they get meaning. And what is all of this life without having a sense of meaning and purpose that's validated by belonging with others? So, in a nutshell.
And if we start from this place of impact, right, when we're stuck in this kind of toxic martyrdom, self-sacrifice mode, do you feel any better after reminding yourself about that? About being able to continue doing your work by getting paid?
This is like the work of creating the new that we want to see in the world, and not just subscribing to the system and martyring ourselves. But yet I'm, this is it. They're like, this is it.
Often we can use that pathway that's already there in the brain of kind of obsessing about other people's needs over our own. And we can hijack it a little bit by focusing on the impact over the income. And from there, start to ask that next question. And it doesn't have to be there are some great coaches out there that'll be like, you should all be making $20 million, and that's great. And I think that's great. And we can talk about that next, because I think that's also an important part of the money talk, but is the false scarcity. But often we're not ready for that if we're in Martyr Town. So that's where we come back to these needs, right? And we're like, okay, if I want to keep making this impact, if I can see the ripple effect of me showing up to do this work, what do I need baseline, most minimum, to keep doing it? And I know that's it's not a cool goal, and it doesn't look good. What is the base minimum is not a great Instagram post, right? It's not inspiring. But I know that often that is all we can handle when we're at that place, because it's a survival mode place. The martyrdom, as you said, it feels like protection to you, right? So we can stay within, without cracking out of that paradigm, we can stay within it and say, okay, maybe then I know, well, if I need to contribute this much to the household, then I need to make this much more. And we can start with these very micro money goals until you start to do that deeper repair work like you're talking about. That's step one. Get psyched on your impact, and then let yourself have the micro needs goals. Don't even get into the desires. Don't even get to the big dreams. The little stuff where I remember looking around and being like, I really need to go to therapy. It's a year and a half. I was like, I don't go to therapy. This is not going to be okay on so many different levels. There will not be a business. I will not be helping these people. This won't exist. It's well, what do I have to do to be able to do that? I have to pay myself more. Therapy costs money. It costs a fair amount of money, right? I spend a huge amount of my income on therapy. And that for me, I was like, I think the only reason I was able to do that was because I looked at it within the greater context of okay, all these people say this is helping them, so I should probably keep doing it. That means I have to do this thing for myself. So we can kind of loop around and kind of take advantage of that part of your brain to get you a raise, Natalie.
You are speaking my language here. And, I thank you for this, because this is really validating, because I was kind of, just this week I've been in it, and, I've been you know what, maybe I need to titrate. This is what my therapist said. I love that you're in therapy because you get this. Because my therapist, I brought to her one day, I was like, sometimes the things are so big, I just like can't feel it. If I allow myself to really feel it, I get like sucked in it for days. And she's like, titrate. She's like, only feel as much as you can. And I'm applying this to like, it's my nervous system is like, danger, danger, do not earn the money. And then it's like, well, what about if you just take this amount, receive, or my words, but like, what if you allow yourself to receive this amount? You don't have to jump straight to the dream. And like, I love that you're saying this because that really is like building up safety. And in nervous system speak, it's like building up that capacity to receive without having alarms go off and having that shutdown happen.
Yeah, I think that I love all the big inspiration talk. If you need somebody to talk you into raising your prices or charging more or whatever, like I am your girl. I am there for you. And I know that we're not always at a place to actually receive that, right? It doesn't feel safe. It's very concerning. It's very upsetting. And if you are someone who, like Natalie and like me, and like I'm sure a lot of the people listening, who is essentially deeply touched by the world around them, right? Extremely sensitive. It is very hard to make that leap from underpaying yourself chronically to like, I don't know, magically paying yourself like, I don't know, 6 figures or something, right? It's like that's a big jump. So you don't have to do it right away. I like this. Like, let's titrate some money in if you're finding that it doesn't feel safe. And like, that's such a great way to put it, Natalie.
Thanks. And thank you for that. And thank you for this little coaching sesh here. And thanks everyone to listening to my money stuff. Oh my God. But I really wish we could like have more just freedom to talk about money too in the world. It's like such a thing. And it's like, especially in the spiritual community and talking about money and like not having it and have all these things. But I would kind of want to take it, kind of continuing this like thread of money and therapy and mental health and stuff. Just saying, looking at the patterns of money, you're someone, I'm not wholly familiar with your background. So actually, you just tell me, like, do you come from a place of having, had childhood trauma or trauma that, has impacted your health and your mental wellness and all of this? I mean, I know little bits of your kind of background, but not much. So yeah.
Thanks to therapy. I have realized that I have some issues that are probably underlying my mental and physical health. I have some of the kind of signs and symptoms of CPTSD. I think probably more of us do than people think. But I come overall from like what would be considered a very kind of classic, stable, upper middle class family. Everything was totally fine except for the things that weren't, primarily like emotional neglect issues in my household that have affected my attachment style, my ability to feel safe and secure, and all sorts of fun and juicy stuff. And has led me to have depression, anxiety issues since I was very young. And I also spent about a decade in active alcohol addiction and drug addiction. I'm not not as a result of that, but like as like a part of that continuation to kind of self-medicate and manage. So that is my background, and I'm still somebody has extreme anxiety and depression issues. So I love it. It's just super fun being here.
Right. Okay. Thank you for sharing that, because I too have a similar background of like emotional neglect. Like my parents just didn't know how to be there emotionally. They had their own trauma, and it was just like this nice clusterfuck of wounding. And they attach all of what you just said. I'm like, yes. I mean, I wasn't an alcoholic or drug addict in active addiction or anything, but with like the like similar patterns, and like being in therapy and looking at all this money stuff, I'm like, wow, all of my relationships with money so closely mirror my relationships with my parents and safety, and the coming back around to like business, being a business owner and being in this capitalistic system. I'm someone who has like chronic fatigue and chronic pain, and like my mental health goes up and down. It is not like a fucking sunny day every day. I know how to get myself in a good place because of self-care and meditation and exercise and nutrition and whatever the fuck I gotta do. But like some days I cannot function because I'm in that emotional flashback of trauma. And I'm like, I literally like my vision narrows, my brain is foggy, and I can't function as a business owner. And like this, speaking to building in, having awareness of your needs and building that into your business, like I would love to hear about how have you, this is a journey. First of all, I'm going to say this is a journey that has taken me failing pretty much in every way to build this into my business, to realizing that I need to build this in and still figuring out how to build this in. So like, can you just maybe share for the folks who maybe we can help them shortcut their journey, for the folks who resonate with our stories here? What are some of the awarenesses that you have as someone with, who has this kind of background and these kinds of experiences? What awarenesses did you have that you needed to build into your business, and how did you do that, and what does it look like? Like, how is this possible for people with chronic pain and fucked up mental health and trauma and all kinds of bullshit and who hate the system?
It is possible. And this is where I start to get on my, like, I think small business is absolutely fucking critical, because as we, and this is not new, but it is so present, especially with how easy it is comparatively to have an online business. Now, we can complain about software costs, but like startup costs for an online business have like literally, like, it's never been cheaper to start a business. You don't even need like a rental space. Like it has become much more accessible. And I really believe that, due to the like non-existent social safety net, at least here in the United States, a lot of folks who are chronically ill, who are disabled, who are mentally ill, who have these challenges, whether they are enough to make you not somebody who can be employed in like a traditional job or not, there's not a lot of options. And I think that small business ownership is one of the most powerful options for folks who, for whatever reason, don't fit into a traditional work mode or can't work those kinds of jobs. And this is where I get like very passionate, because like this has been true for me, but like so many people in the community that I support are in that exact situation, right? So what that means, though, is that we have to, frankly, radically reimagine how we spend our time and what our expectations are. And we have such a deep dogma around time in the United States and Western culture in general, but it is like a dogmatic obsession with maximization, with proper utilization, with clocking in and clocking out, right? And it's like, this is like massively deep, like spiritual, personal work to reimagine. So I'm saying that up front just to be like, if you're someone who's like, yeah, I have a small business or I want a small business and I need to have a different way to make money for all of the reasons, so many good ones to need a different way to make money. But I don't know how to make these shifts. Like, you have been trained your entire life not to be able to make this shift. If you were if you went to anything even resembling a traditional school in the United States, you were trained not to be able to make this shift. Okay. So just like keep up. This is like a lot of years of indoctrination. I think the first step, and this one is so hard, but it is going to, like, if you can do it, it will it'll like blow your mind, is to break out of the 8-hour workday. Okay.
And into the 16-hour workday. No,
no, I know. I love those memes that go around there. People are like, I used to work here. I didn't want to work 40 hours a week. So now I work 24/7 in my own business. And I laugh very hard. And then I say, no. And the short answer is, I mean, like, just to be upfront, there will be times in your business, seasons where you are working 16 hours a day. Well, okay, hopefully not 16 hours a day. There are seasons, though, like where I work 7 days a week. I'm in one right now. We're launching. We're wrapping up for the year. I am working every day during the week right now. I also just got out of a season where I kind of maybe worked like 3 days a week, kind of, sort of, didn't have to do very much. Breaking out of the 8-hour workday or the 5-day work week is all about reimagining. And we come back to this imagination, this possibility machine that lives in your brain. It's so fucking cool. What your days can be like. And if you've been working in any kind of traditional job, and I worked in retail and restaurants for years, which just really messes up with your sense of time and like work. I'm like, what's a weekend? Like, when does work end? It doesn't end. There's always side work to do. Like, I can go fold some napkins. That I think that one of the most powerful ways to do this is to make sure that during times where you feel like you should be working, you're actually consciously doing something else. So my current one is that I go to the gym at 10 or 11 in the morning during the weekday. And I feel guilty almost every single time I go still. Not because I'm going to the gym, but I'm like, oh, it's 11 o'clock. It's like in my body, I'm like, it's 11 o'clock. It's not even lunchtime. I should be at a computer working. And like my whole body is like contorting around this concept of what it means to be productive and effective and valued and worthy. So instead, I go to the gym for like 2 hours in the middle of the day now. And slowly but surely, that is shifting my relationship to my time. So if you're able and you are starting a business, and even if you're doing this like part-time on the side, I don't care. Sometime when you think you're supposed to be working, schedule an appointment, go to the grocery shop, go to the gym, go for a walk, play a video game, consciously do things during work hours that are not work. And not just because you're like at your job and you're trying to tell your boss to fuck off. So you're like on Facebook or whatever, right? I mean, like when you are being your own boss, because in order to restructure this, we have to break it and start to change those patterns. That was long. Sorry, I got a little excited.
Please don't ever be sorry. I'm like, just keep preaching. This is, yeah, I love that. I feel that too. And it's like the weird time guilt, shame, and like shame that you have the free time that you've chosen, not even have, that you've chosen to structure your day in such a way that you have the time that you need in the morning to be well in your body and your mind before you get into your creative work. Whatever. Like sometimes I wake up ready to fucking write and do my thing. And sometimes I need to exercise or meditate or journal all my fucking goop out of my head before I can actually get to the creative. Let's write the post. Let's write the email. Let's vision the next lunch or whatever, So like this time stuff is so whack and it is so deep. Yes. Okay. What about some other, restructuring time? That's one of your awarenesses. What other kind of awarenesses, like when you're looking at, living with, do you live with chronic pain?
I don't have chronic pain, but I have chronic illness issues.
Chronic illness. Okay, that was it. Chronic. So like looking at that, like you said, you're in a season of that you're launching. So you're working a lot right now, but then, you had a season of less work. How might one, because anytime I've tried to like work a quote traditional job, whether it's office work to serving, and I've had like 30 jobs. Oh my god, in my life, because my parents were like,
I'm not dissimilar to that.
Yeah, all right, yeah. I turned 14. My parents were like, "You're old enough to work. You're getting a job," and I was like, "What?" So I was like, "I've just been working and hating most of it." I don't hate Earthspeak though. I love Earthspeak, but like all these jobs, I had a couple jobs I liked. If you're listening, bosses, I loved you. But they know who they are. But like it's like I spent all my time working, and then my time off, I would just be like so exhausted that all of my time off would be spent recovering, and then I would have to just so I could work again. Like that cycle is so vicious. So like, how do you combat that especially as someone with chronic illness in your own business, and create that buffer and space to like actually be able to live, And some of it comes from that time restructuring, but like, what else do you gotta like look at there?
Yeah, I mean, this is a place where we can get really tactical. It's ultimately very specific to the kind of work that somebody's doing. But I think that there's usually a few things at play. We have to notice the time thing first, because what I'll see people do is try to overbook and undercharge in their businesses because they're so used to the time, right? So if you used to work 40 hours a week at a normal job, and let's say you have now made the leap to part-time or full-time in your own business or something like that, you are not being paid hourly anymore by anybody. Right. But you're probably running your business like you are. So I have to sit here at the desk. I have to work for 8 hours. Often what I see is people charge like hourly rates that are more comparable to what they would have been paid in a job, instead of realizing that if you have one client a day and they pay you $20 or even $60, or frankly, even $100, that doesn't actually it's nowhere near covering the amount of hours that you're working. You are no longer an hourly employee. So we have to look at the actual structure of your business model. People who have chronic illness and chronic health issues and mental health challenges often need a model that has some level of scalability to it. By that, I mean, you do one thing and it impacts multiple people at once, right? Even if you love one-on-one work, I know you probably have tons of listeners, and I have tons of folks in my community who love doing readings and healing sessions and one-on-one work. Often for folks who have health issues, who are disabled, who have caregiving responsibilities, that needs to be paired with something that's more scalable. So that could be a course, a membership, an ebook, whatever. Right here, a podcast is extremely scalable, right? You record once, tons of people get to listen to it. So that's like this kind of first kind of structural piece. And then with that, what you set up, I have this concept that I'm obsessed with called minimal viable business, which is knowing what your baseline business required activities are essentially on a daily or weekly or even monthly basis. So having a business that does not require you to show up live in order to get paid, at least not all the time, I think is very helpful. But secondary to that is also knowing what it actually has to happen in order to fulfill on what you've made, right? So if you make physical products, you need to probably ship those products, right? But do you need to ship them every single day? No, you probably don't, unless you're at a certain business size, in which case then you probably have people who can help, or the UPS guy knows you and comes to your house at this point, right? So we start to think about what are the structures saying, okay, if I make this thing, the baseline, somebody ordered this, it has to be shipped today. Can that be the only thing that you do that day? Can you let that be the only thing you do that day? That thing had to get done today. That had to be shipped, or I had to come in a good way and record with you today, right? This was on my like non-negotiable task list for the day. But I'm also in a season right now where I'm working a lot, and frankly, my mental health has been fucking trash for months now. When I'm done with this, I am doing nothing until my next call. I am staring into space. I have a long list of things to do. I have a lot to do, and I'm doing none of it. Only thing that matters for me today are showing up for all my live calls. So we start to triage in this way and prioritize. And maybe if you worked a traditional job of some kind, you had some prioritization, but often you didn't. You probably weren't given that space to prioritize. If you worked at a restaurant or a retail store, nothing is ever prioritized. Everything is always urgent. Your business is not that way. So scalable offers help a lot, but also this time triage thing where you're like, what actually has to happen today? If I don't do this, I miss a deadline. I don't do something I told I would do a customer, and also side note, you can always tell customers that you're running late, like just communicate. But it's essentially like giving yourself the kindness and the space to be like, I'm not going to work hard today if I feel like shit. Don't work hard. Working hard is silly. Only work hard when you actually need to and you feel good and you're excited about it. That's my business advice. Every other time, don't do anything. No. You do have to do work. But does that make sense? This like triage concept?
I do. It really does. It really does. And, I've spent a lot of time learning how to notice that edge in myself to make that decision, to not sort of blackmail myself into thinking otherwise, being like, what is the thing I actually have to get done today? And what maybe doesn't have to get done today? And like, what do I actually have to do to deliver on the promises that people did pay me for? And doing that. And then if I can't because of mental illness or because of some sort of chronic pain coming up, being able to communicate that. And if that ever happens, people are usually, I buffer in time in my delivery too, that in case something does happen, it's not like, oh, I already was up to the last moment. It's like, oh, they're usually more than willing to just move it a little bit, not to be, it's okay. Like, it's not as urgent as it might feel. And like, that is a fucking journey to learn and to accept and to process that guilt around and the shame around. Yeah.
When I restructured my business and launched my membership over 2 years ago now, I basically had gotten to the point where I couldn't do one-on-one work anymore. I was like, there's no way. And I was reading tarot, teaching tarot primarily full-time and making physical products. And I set myself up with a membership where if I do nothing else but show up twice a month for live calls, I have fulfilled my promise. And I don't mean this in the sense like, if just like for me personally, I'm so proud of myself because I've actually not had to last minute reschedule a single call in 2 years. And that's not because
I say same.
Amazing. It's not, but I used to reschedule all the time, and I've rescheduled other things, but for my membership, I haven't had to last minute reschedule a call in 2 years. And that is because I figured out, I like prioritize it. So I know that that is the most important thing I do every month is show up for those 2 calls. And that means that anything else gets moved, right? That's the level of clarity I have about my job, this thing. the idea that I haven't rescheduled something in 2 years for that particular, like those particular calls, blows my mind. If you had told me that 2 years ago, I would have never believed you, because I was sick all the time and I couldn't make my life, I couldn't make it to my stuff pretty routinely.
But you nailed it of like, this is what I can commit to showing up to. And that is spacious enough for you to have that replenishment, that recharge. You know, there's so much other work that goes on in between that. You got to do sales. Maybe you're developing other products within the membership. You're like, man,
Totally.
You know, like I
There's
understand
plenty of
I run
other
a
work.
membership too. Yeah, it's
You know.
fucking nuts. But, you know, for me, like my promise is I show up once a week to our live call to have a discussion, lead a guided grounding and clearing. And then, you know, we do a little community connection, discussing different topics that have come up. And like, I've been in Bali deep in a training. And so Shauna had to hold a call for me twice when I was doing that, because I had literally no internet or anything. You know, that was 2 weeks. And then like, I have shown up. I think I've missed like maybe 2 other calls, but they went on, and we structured it too so that it's me and Shauna, so that there's a buffer. If something happens and Shauna has a lot of work, I can hold it. If, you know, we're usually both there, but like each of us have missed probably 5 or less calls ever in the last 2 years. Like, and we built this system of each other so that we could have, like, we knew this, like this, and this is what, for me, these calls are what light me up and keep me going in the business. Every week I see our people's faces and I fucking love them so much. And I'm like, I show up for you and for us, and every week these, so like this, I love that. I'm just getting too excited. I'm going to go on a whole tangent about how much I'm like, okay. And it's like all the other stuff in the business. Actually, the podcasting too. I fucking love podcasting. But all the other stuff is like it's so heavy and hard sometimes. And that's like really challenging. So that's an edge. But okay. Where were we? Focus up, Natalie. Focus up. I'm getting all fired up.
Nothing wrong with that.
Thanks. So you were able to figure out like, here's what I can promise on and deliver. And you had to just like figure out how to, you know, that scalability, and that, you know, that's really, I think, key. And that's why we chose a membership too. I was like, this is scale. I cannot make a living doing one-to-one work. And I don't think people who work in corporate jobs or think about corporate jobs or anything realize actually how much money the company puts into them above their salary, because there's so much going into health insurance and all this, and they don't factor that into the cost of how much they need to make for their own business. Like, there's so many hidden costs that if you just look at a corporate, you know, like looking at my husband and his corporate job, he gets a salary, but we also have insanely good insurance, and we have all these other benefits. And all of those add up to way more that you need to make as a individual to cover this for yourself. And like, there's all these costs. So I don't know. I love that you're just breaking it down for people. You're like, look, you got to figure out how much you got to make. What's your capacity to deliver? And, you know, like, how do you unstructure these structures of the machine that live in you, that these beliefs that you thought you had to be doing to quote work and make a living? No, fuck the time. Fuck this, fuck that, do this. This works. Okay. So,
Can I say one thing? Because I can almost
please,
hear
of
it
course.
like ringing in my head. There's somebody listening to this who's like, this sounds great, but I want to work with people who can't afford to pay those kinds of rates, right?
My God, yes, please. Thank you. Go there.
So
Take it.
I want to go there because I think this comes back to the martyrdom thing. I actually have a lot of opinions on this, that you will not be able to help anyone if you are not paid. And after I have tried it all, I have done so many different variations of different kinds of pricing models, different kinds of models. I have done donation based, I have done sliding scale, I have done a lot of different things. And I think all those models can work. But ultimately, if you are not able to care for yourself, you will not be able to support anyone, especially the people who cannot afford your higher 101 rates, for example. So I just want to challenge you. This is a place where that imagination can be so unbelievably powerful, to think about what will be possible if you are actually resourced. What can you actually do? Can you create a robust podcast like Natalie does that is available for free, like on the internet? Like, can you have sessions available every month for folks who are unable to pay your rates? Like, those things become possible if you're able to keep doing your work. I think it really, like, this is a hard one and there's a lot of nuance, but I think ultimately just like be mindful of that desire to sacrifice yourself again, because if you are not like fed, like you can't keep helping all the people who are looking to you for your work. So just keep that in mind. And I think that's totally fine. Like you can have different prices, you can have different kinds of offers, but just like we need you well. We need you cared for. We need you resourced. So please get yourself paid.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I feel like you're speaking to me. So I'm going to take it. But I think we've covered so many like ways that the system lives in people who want to start a business and how they kind of just perpetuate that system in their own business and how they might unstructure that and plant seeds of what they actually want to be living and doing to the best of their ability within the system, but not of it. And I just think this is so fun to get into, like, what are the mistakes that holistic business owners make, or people who, I don't know, what do you call your people? What, because like, are they holistic business owners yet, or are they like conscious entrepreneur? What do you call them?
Yeah, holistic, spiritual entrepreneurs,
Spiritual
soul-centered
entrepreneurs.
entrepreneurs, whatever. We can
Okay.
call them people who want to do good work and make good money, but aren't.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Spiritual entrepreneurs. I love that you're sharing about so many of the false beliefs and mistakes that people make when they are approaching making business. So, I, uh, God, I'm just gonna have you back on the show because I had like too many questions. I want to hear more about your personal story. I want to keep hitting mistakes. Maybe I think what's coming up is I want to see, is there any other like big mistake or misconception that you see people having when they are approaching business for themselves?
Oh, that you're going to be really successful overnight, and that if you're not, you're like, your business sucks.
Oh yeah. What do you think about that timeline? And what is like, how
Yeah,
does one gauge that?
not overnight. It is the number of folks that I work with who are carrying around some kind of dogmatic belief about their own worthiness because of their timeline is very high. And it's not always readily apparent. It shows up in really insidious ways, like people trying something new, not getting the response they expected, and thinking that that means that their work sucks, right? Or raising their prices and then not and getting fewer sales the first round and thinking that means that it was bad, right? And usually what that is actually it's a comparison to the external. You're looking at what other people on Instagram are posting, and your poor, beautiful brain really, even though logically you know it, your brain is not really able to discern the fact that they are presenting what they want to present, right? Your brain on some level is taking in that information as if it were the entire truth, even if maybe part of you consciously knows it's not. The first step here is to just notice, I mean, this is just good advice in general, but just notice what you're consuming, especially in terms of media. Notice who you are paying attention to and listening to. Do you feel excited, enthusiastic, moved? If it's something that was challenging for you, did it feel challenging in a generative way, or are you feeling bad about yourself? Right? Because often what happens is people are, especially now, especially online, it is so unbelievably easy to just look around and be like, oh, all these people say they have six-figure businesses. The word saying six-figure business actually means nothing. That could mean, and I've seen people do this, which is fine, but it's not clear, that they've made six figures over the course of 7 or 10 years, right? This is what we call marketer math. And I've seen
I think of six-figure business. I think you make at least six figures of revenue in a year. That doesn't account for all your expenses and what you pay yourself. Because we're a case of that. We make six figures of revenue, but yeah.
I think that's what it's supposed to mean, but I have definitely seen people use it in other ways. Same like, at all levels, right? So they're adding up all their total revenue, and saying that that makes them a six-figure business or a seven-figure business. There are people who are sharing lifestyle things that are not related to their business, right? Like you shared that, like your husband covers a lot of your household expenses, right? If you were, and you don't do this, but if you were presenting yourself as like a lifestyle brand guru based off of his money, right? And people are like, oh, wow, Natalie's got it going on. She's making so much money. Look at that fancy handbag or that cottage in the woods. I was like, what's the earth speak
My
equivalent of
status
the
symbol is definitely a witchy cottage in the woods. Yes.
Exactly. You're like, look at that status symbol cottage. Like, It's so true, right? We're over on Witch Talk now doing tours of Natalie's Status Symbol Cottage. And you were presenting that through the lens of, oh, I'm a small business owner and here's my cottage. Often, it's not explicit lies, and I don't think people really mean to be doing what they're doing, but there is this like kind of keeping up with the Joneses thing that happens. So I see this, whether often unconsciously, where people start denigrating their own work and their own speed because they are absorbing this information as if it were entirely true. And it's not, right? And I'm not like somebody who thinks you need to show receipts. Like, I don't need to see your, Stripe statements or whatever, but just like be mindful that people can spin numbers and lives and angles of a camera so many different ways, right? Actual timeline depends on so many factors. It depends on, frankly, your access to other people and to money, right? There are a lot of folks whose businesses grow really fast and they have access to funding. They have access to friends and family who are giving them money. They're able to get business loans. It's a lot easier to grow a business faster if you have money to spend, right? I did not. So my business has grown slower than a fair number of people that are kind of colleagues of mine.
Mm-hmm.
Bootstrap, right? I hate that, but it's also like kind of is the technical
it's
term in the US.
I know. It's got such a like grime to it. Yeah.
So we bootstrap, and that means that your growth is often slower because you usually have to split your focus, because you have to find quick revenue streams in order to fund longer term revenue streams. Something like a membership, right, is a great longer term revenue stream, but it probably took you guys some time to get there. Like when you launched that, you already had an existing audience, you had an existing brand. Same with me. So there's a lot of factors.
Mm-hmm.
Still took time, right? And it still took time.
We used Facebook ads to grow our revenue and then put that money back into Facebook ads. And we grew and grew because of that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No. And you've been doing that, as you said, right? And you're underpaying yourself, right? So just keep in mind, there's all these different factors, right? So there's that. There's also the access to like know-how, right? Your first business is probably going to be your slowest growth business. If I started a business now, I'm sure it would grow much faster. I know a lot more, right? Probably you too. So there's all these different things at play. And right, and some level of like, were you raised by people or in communities that taught you things about business, or did you have to spend 50 hours on Google to figure out how to pay your taxes this year, right? Again, been there. So there's all these factors at play too. So just keep in mind, like, you are, to borrow a very nice kind of corporate-y startup vibe, run your own race, okay? Like, you don't know. So, but real talk, the first year for most businesses is just a total fucking shit show, and you need to give yourself a break, right? And especially if you're working in your business super part-time, your first year is longer than a year, okay? If you're spending like 1 day a month working on your business, your first year is going to be longer than a year. Give yourself a break, y'all. By year 2, I often see things start to congeal for people. They're often able to either go full time or start to cobble together some part-time work that give them more freedom in the business. Usually we've gotten some revenue, we've got some legs under us. And like startup stage it's like until year 5. Like, this is not, especially in online business and spiritual wellness, like people are so disconnected, I think, from the wider business space that they lose track of like your first 5 years are basically considered startup years. The IRS considers them startup years, right? In the first 5 years, I think you can declare a loss. I'm not a tax expert, but like you can keep declaring a loss because they don't expect you to actually make any money. So that's to say, it's not going to happen overnight, but maybe a couple years, question mark. Like, be nice to yourself, y'all. This is like a big thing.
Damn, thank you. I'm like, when you are regenerated and rested, you've been to therapy, you've been to the spa or whatever your treat is in a few months, and you're like done launching and you have space in your life to come back on the show, please let us know, because I just want to keep going there. I am like, please don't stop talking. But fortunately, you also have a podcast that people can listen to, and that, we can get our truth bombs and elucidations. So like I've something I really appreciate about what you do is everything we've talked about here is like you are able to see the very specific and unique needs and places that people like us are coming from and speak to that, because we aren't just hustle culture. We aren't proud of hustling harder and just reaching the dollar amount because it's money. We aren't motivated by that, and we don't have the wherewithal. So many of the people that I know who are in business are parents, and they're already fatigued from their children, and they're like, how do I even run a business? And so many other people like myself have chronic pain and face chronic illnesses and have like hormonal imbalances that sometimes disable us for an entire week of the month. It's like I've had to build in structure for that. I don't take meetings during the week before my period. I'm like, I cannot have anything big due then because it will not happen. It's just like devastating. And this is with like after 10 years of doing healing work where I am in such a better place now, because before it was the whole month I couldn't function, so like you understand this and you're able to speak to people in this and help guide them through their actual needs. And but we're not just bypassing off into just like do this thing and then magically it'll manifest. Like, no, there's work, there's effort, there's stuff that has to go into making a business. It's not just like gonna appear. Like, magic happens. Fuck yeah, cool magic shit happens. Do all the things. Like, I love doing visualizations. They've helped me a lot. But like, there's also like put the rubber to the road. So what I love, I'm getting to it. I love this because I've been part of other business memberships that are like just feel more regurgitation of the hustle. And I was really missing what you offer. So I appreciate what you offer. And it's why we want to bring you on the show. And like, I went into, I joined your membership and I was like, does Sarah have an affiliate members like program? Because I want to fucking just shout this out to any other spiritual entrepreneur who's like, how the fuck do I do this? Because I feel like you really are able to hold that space to see people, meet them where they're at, and guide them through what it actually takes to create a business. And, I think my own personal stuff, like you've helped me. And even today on our call and the little mini selfish coaching session I had that is, unselfishly shared with others, showing my fucking true colors here with money. That's helpful. And I think we need to talk about this more like in the world. And I'm grateful that you're doing this. So I'm excited. I'm excited that you're here. I'm excited that you're going to be, that we're affiliates now for you, that we can like share this. And what this means, people, is when you sign up for what Sarah offers in her Holistic Business Academy, it doesn't cost you any extra, but EarthSpeak gets a little piece of the pie, and all get to go, and Sarah gets a piece of the pie, and you all get to do better, and we all get to be happier and thrive. So I love this. I'm so excited. Tell us what you got coming up and what we're going to be doing soon with our, you have a special free presentation that we're doing. Tell us about this.
Yes. So first of all, I just want to say paying people is like my favorite thing in the world. And if you haven't gotten to that place in your business, that's just something delightful that you get to look forward to. And it really starts to change.
Is fun. I love
it really starts to change the game when you're like, oh, paying people. And I think, of course, like affiliate partnerships are something that are really common and have been for years, referrals, but I'm starting to just love it so much because of this very reason, right? Where we get to kind of continue to like spread resources and care through our communities. And I think like affiliate partnerships are just like such a great way to do that. So I'm like, I can't wait to pay you. Like, I love paying out our affiliates every month. It's like
I'm going to pay myself out of this from our healing on this podcast. I'm going to give myself some of that money. And thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being part of my healing.
This is so juicy, right? I love it. But yes, on December 7th, we're going to do a free training just for our EarthSpeak community friends. You are all invited. And it's all about how to attract your ideal customers without doing all the things. Hashtag do all the things, internet speak, I know, but without hustle mode. And we're going to really look at the difference between hustle and holistic business and lay out essentially how our holistic business framework approaches growing and sustaining a business without feeling like you're going to sell out or like you're going to burn out, right? We're going to help you to break this down. And we're doing that. I have it on Eastern time. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So I'm guessing that is 4
p.m. Pacific. Mm-hmm.
Math. Awesome. Yep. And I imagine, can we link that up in the show notes so folks can
of course,
register?
That is going to be in the show notes. Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it will be about an hour long, and then we'll do a Q&A. And I love a Q&A, y'all. You guys have heard I like to talk. I'm happy to stay as long as you want me to answer any questions you have about your business and about what we teach there. And at the end of that, we'll give you an opportunity to join the community and tell you a little bit about it in case it is a good fit for where you are in business. If you want to hang out with a bunch of, I don't know, witchy weirdos and like earth loving, like hippie people growing businesses, like, then it's a really good place to be. And you will, like, learn how to grow a business that you don't hate is kind of my goal.
Maybe that you even love.
Maybe that you even love. We could go one step further. Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited. I'm so grateful. I'm like, just so grateful you're doing what you do, because this is a real need in the world, and you have brought me life today, and I hope that we've helped bring listeners some life today. And y'all, the link to come party with us on December 7th is in the show notes, and I believe that we're gonna have a recording available for folks so that if they can't make it live, they can still sign up and get it. And
Totally.
even if the date has passed, you're listening to this in 2022, go sign up and get it. And you can just look at it on your own time, and then reach out and come see us all party in Holistic Business Academy with us if this is right for you. And if it's not, cool. No, maybe today you took away some pieces, and cool. We're not here to be icky manipulative. We're like really just trying to fucking help.
And like, come to the free training and like learn, right? And ask me questions.
Right.
Like, it's such a great time to, like, I love doing free trainings because, yes, I get to like share about our work with everyone, but it's also one of the ways that I'm able to, like we were talking about earlier, to sustainably give back. So like, if you're like, I have no interest in joining anything, but I want to learn some about business, come. Great. Come hang out.
If you want some straight up business reflection from Sarah here, some coaching, then come to the live on December 7th. We will see you there. Super stoked. Okay. And so besides that, which is going to be a party, what else? What do you offer? You have Holistic Business Academy, you have your podcast. What else? And where can people find you?
Yeah, we have a bunch of new stuff that we're rolling out in the next year. I'm really excited that Holistic Business Academy is growing and going to be more and more. We're going to be bringing in more new teachers, more guest experts, and all sorts of like just juicy stuff. Because I have never wanted it to be the Sarah show, and I'm really excited for it to be less of the Sarah show and more of the like, look at all these awesome, brilliant people show. So if you want to stay up to date with that, the best way to do that is probably to come find me on Instagram. I'm at Sarah M Chappell, and that's where you can find anything we're working on, and find the podcast, and find HBA, and stay up to date with what we're doing.
Well, thank you. And of course, that's in the show notes as well. All right, Sarah, thank you so much for your time today, coming on the show, and thank you for what you do. And I cannot wait to see you again and talk again. And this has been lovely. Thanks for being our guest.
Thank you so much for having me. It has been such a pleasure. And thank you to everyone listening. I appreciate you letting us spend some time with you today.
Totally. Thanks, folks.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free EarthSpeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app, and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.